Hello there, and thanks for joining me. I'm digital artist Aaron Rutten, and in this video, I'm going to share my advice on when you should start a Patreon. So what is Patreon? Patreon is a website that lets your fans support the content that you're creating, and in turn, you can give them special members-only rewards. You can check out my Patreon at patreon.com/Aaron Rutten if you want an example of the rewards I offer. But for those of you who don't have a Patreon, I want to talk a little bit about when you should start a Patreon. And in fact, just recently, one of my artist friends asked my advice on the matter. And so here's basically what I said. You have to kind of determine whether you have an audience yet. If you don't have an audience, then you should probably wait to start a Patreon and build your audience first. People have to know who you are and they have to know what kind of content you're going to create to get behind supporting that. You're also not going to get 100% of your audience supporting you on Patreon. It'll be a very small fraction, so you need a much bigger audience in order to be able to make enough money to make it worth your time. So if you don't have an audience yet, it's better to build your brand recognition first, and then once you have an audience, Patreon would be worth trying. So really what would be most effective is doing what I did and starting a YouTube channel, because you're going to expose yourself to a much wider audience than most other social media platforms out there. But it doesn't hurt to have a blog and a website and Facebook and Twitter and use all of that stuff regularly as well. The more wide of a net you cast, the more audience you're going to gather. And as I mentioned earlier, the larger audience you have, the more success you're going to have on Patreon. So if you're scratching your head wondering what would I make a YouTube channel about as an artist, well, just look at what I'm doing, for example. I'm basically just showing my creative process, and you don't have to necessarily do it the exact same way I do it. You could have your phone just pointed at your screen or something very simple like that. It doesn't have to be super complicated and fancy. If you can be in the videos and talk in the videos occasionally and talk about who you are and what you do, that's even better, because then people will connect with you and they'll want to support your work, and that would really be the most effective in my opinion. There aren't consequences to starting a Patreon too early. I think it would be better to start one rather than not start one. But if you start one too early, what's going to happen is you're going to be sitting there with $35 a month and, 3 patrons, or $1 or $0 a month. And it's going to stay that way for a while, because your growth on Patreon directly relates to your growth on all of your social media networks that are driving the traffic to Patreon. People aren't just going to magically find you on Patreon. You have to send them there. And so it also comes down to how much you're promoting Patreon. Are you promoting it everywhere you possibly can? Are you talking about it in videos like this guy here? Because if you're not, people aren't going to go there because they just don't know about it. So that's kind of my advice for those of you who want to know when to start Patreon that don't have an audience. But what if you already have an audience? Well, then the best time to start is right now. Do it right now. Because a lot of people I know out there are putting it off, and they're really just missing out on a lot of support and a lot of income that they could be using to improve what they're doing and have more success with it. I wouldn't necessarily rush into it. I'd take time to plan it out and start thinking about the kind of rewards you want to offer, start thinking about how you want to describe your goals. And really, you probably have a lot of that already up here in your head. You already know what you want to accomplish as an artist. Maybe you want to go full time. Maybe you want to travel to paint. Maybe you need to buy a specific type of gear or art supplies or something like that. Maybe you want to publish a book. That audience of subscribers or followers or fans, those are all people who could convert over into patrons and probably would like to help support those projects that you're working on. Now, another big mistake that I see Patreon creators make is not offering anything. They say, well, I'll just keep on doing what I'm doing and you can give me money, and you're not going to get anything, but you'll get the satisfaction of knowing that you're giving me money for absolutely no reason at all. And in principle, that is really the reason why people support you on Patreon. They want to support what you're already giving them for free. And in my case, I'm putting out free videos on YouTube, and a lot of people who are supporting me on Patreon are supporting that. They're not there to get whatever rewards I offer. They appreciate those rewards and they enjoy getting them, but that isn't the reason why they pledge most of the time. But it's kind of just how it works on Patreon. That's the ecosystem there. You should offer rewards. They don't have to be things like prints or commissions or anything really labor intensive or complicated or anything that costs money. You can offer intangible rewards. Those are things like a shout out, or you'll follow them on their social media, or you'll dedicate a painting to your entire audience and you'll just make up something once a month, or do early releases of your videos or longer versions of your videos. There's so many things that you can do that don't really take anything other than a little bit of time. And in some cases, you can even repurpose a lot of stuff. Maybe you have old behind the scenes paintings that you can show them, or bloopers from your videos or something like that. There's a lot of stuff that you probably already have that could be rewards that you don't have to spend time creating. And your audience will really enjoy being able to see that stuff if it's behind the scenes content that the general public doesn't get to see. So as a quick recap, if you don't yet have an audience, work on building that first. Get people to know who you are, and once you have a little bit of an audience, then start thinking about Patreon. If you already have a decent sized following, even if it's 100 or 1,000 people, just consider that maybe 1% to, let's say, 10% of those people could be potential patrons. So I would recommend, if you have that audience, go ahead and set it up now. Just take your time setting it up and refine it as you go along to make it work best for you while offering value to your audience that they can't get elsewhere. So there you go, that's my advice on when to start a Patreon. If you found this information helpful, take a quick second to like this video. And if you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you subscribe. I have a lot more videos for digital artists like you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.